Hello everyone and welcome to what most likely is the last part of this realistic drawing guide, or at least it's the last part of this drawing where we have gone through the whole process, and our example drawing here of Will Smith is near enough finished. So we need to draw his jumper, his piece of clothing, and we will be doing that in this section. So we have most of it completed, and at the end I might just make some minor adjustments and review the drawing. In terms of clothing, however, we will just be looking at creating the details and the texture of this jumper, and that's pretty straightforward. Again, it's just a case of creating marks with the pencil and looking at the lighter and darker areas. Here on the reference image we do have that shadow coming over onto this right side again. So firstly what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the edge of the jumper. We actually have this grid here as well still, so we can use that to help us. So most of this is left white and we have this other part of the jumper, so I'm going to sketch this part in around his neck. I'm going to start with this part because it has a very prominent pattern and texture to it, and I'm also going to start by lightly creating a similar pattern to what it's like on the reference image, with these lines of fabric going around his neck, and they do gradually get darker the closer we get to the shadow on the right. But like usual, I'm starting off with a light pencil and following it round. Once that's done, I'm going to take a softer pencil like a 2B and work into it a little bit more. Making some of this pattern darker, I'm also going to use a very soft 5B to create a shadow to the right, and this shadow covers pretty much all of the right side of this section. So we have this area of the jumper finished, and looking at the rest of the fabric here, it seems to have these vertical lines all over, most likely from the stitching or texture of this jumper. But another thing to notice is how these lines follow the shape of the creases and the shadows on the clothing. So like here on the reference, we have them coming down and bending with the flow of the fabric. So I'm going to start by taking a light 2H pencil and drawing these in. In some areas of the fabric it's so light that we don't see these lines so much, so we'll just leave that space blank, but keep referring to our reference image and seeing where we need to draw these lines. You don't actually have to worry about being too accurate when it comes to clothing, or at least not as accurate as we was when we was creating a skin texture and things like that. I will most likely be doing a tutorial that goes more in depth in drawing fabrics and clothing, but we are just using the reference to judge what we need to draw here. So we have all these lines drawn in, and in some areas they curve with the folds of the clothing and with the creases, so they're not just vertical lines, they do have a bit of shape to them. But now I'm going to use a 2B pencil to make these darker areas on the jumper, and there's no specific way to go about doing this. I'm just studying the reference, looking at where we see shadows and the darker lines, and then going over them and drawing them in. On the left side there's not so much to do compared to the right side, there's a lot more shadow on that side. So remember to always keep your pencil sharpened as well, because it does help you be a lot more accurate when you're creating the details in the texture. But finally, once you have finished this, then you can take an eraser if you need to bring out any lighter areas. But once that's done, this pretty much completes this whole jumper and clothing section. And now this is the part where we can step back and we can look at the drawing as a whole, put it side by side with the reference and make some subtle adjustments. When I talk about making last minute adjustments, it's nothing major, it's just maybe working into an area a bit more or making some areas darker. I was unsure whether to add a background to this, but I think I'm going to leave it blank. It makes our portrait here stand out more on the paper. So there we go, that concludes this realistic drawing guide and the videos where we covered the whole process of this drawing. I hope that the format and the way I broke down the process was helpful and that you learned at least something from these videos. I'll definitely be doing some more instructional drawing guides in the future, so make sure to subscribe and keep up to date. There's also a lot of other drawing related content on my channel, and also just content that would be of interest to anybody who is passionate about creating. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. And with all that being said, I want to say thank you for watching these videos. I really enjoyed creating them and I look forward to making some more in the future.